The world is full of mysteries. Some are hidden deep in the jungle, in the darkest caves, or the highest mountains. But one of the greatest mysteries of all time happened in the vast, empty sky. It is a story of courage, ambition, and a disappearance that has puzzled us for nearly a century. This is the story of Amelia Earhart. She was more than just a pilot. She was a true pioneer. She broke records and shattered expectations. She showed the world that a woman could be just as brave and daring as any man. Her spirit was wild and free, like the open skies she loved to explore. But it was her final, most audacious goal that would cement her name in history forever, not for a record broken, but for a mystery that remains unsolved. Every great explorer has one last, ultimate challenge they want to conquer. For some, it's climbing the highest peak. For others, it's reaching the South Pole. For Amelia Earhart, it was to fly around the entire world. This wasn't just any flight. It was to be the longest, most difficult journey ever attempted, following a grueling route close to the equator. The trip would cover roughly 29,000 miles, a staggering distance that would test both pilot and machine to their absolute limits. This was her Everest. It was the one great prize that remained, the final jewel in her crown of aviation achievements. The plane she chose for this mammoth undertaking was a marvel of modern engineering. It was a twin-engine Lockheed 10E Electra. This wasn't a simple aircraft, it was a flying laboratory, specially modified for the journey. Extra fuel tanks were fitted into the wings and fuselage, allowing it to fly for thousands of miles without stopping. It was equipped with the latest navigation instruments and communication technology of the day. Amelia called it her flying laboratory, and she, along with her skilled navigator Fred Noonan, spent months planning every single detail of the epic flight. They knew the risks were enormous. The world watched in awe as she began her quest in 1937. This was more than a personal mission. It was a global event. Newspapers ran daily updates on her progress. Radio broadcasts crackled with news of her latest location. She was a beacon of hope and progress in a world that was teetering on the brink of war. Her journey was a powerful statement about human potential and the desire to connect the world. Each successful leg of the flight, from America to Africa, across to India and Southeast Asia, was a victory celebrated by millions of people who were following her incredible adventure. After flying more than 22,000 miles, they had completed over 2/3 of their journey. They were exhausted but determined. The hardest part was still ahead of them, a massive, unforgiving stretch of the Pacific Ocean. Their next major stop was a tiny speck of land called Howland Island. It was a remote, flat coral island, barely 2 miles long and less than a mile wide. Finding it in the middle of the vast blue ocean would be like finding a needle in a haystack. This leg of the journey would be the ultimate test of their skill, their endurance, and their luck. On July 2nd, 1937, Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan took off from Lae, New Guinea. They were bound for Howland Island, about 2,500 miles away. This was it, the most dangerous leg of their entire round-the-world flight. The weather was not perfect. There were clouds and rain showers reported along their route. The flight was expected to take around 18 hours. A U.S. Coast Guard cutter, the Itasca, was waiting near Howland Island. Its job was to act as a radio beacon, guiding Amelia and her Electra safely to the tiny runway that had been built just for her. The world held its breath. As the hours ticked by, the Itasca began picking up radio transmissions from Earhart. Her voice was faint, crackling with static. She reported that she was flying through cloudy weather. She was struggling to get a clear radio bearing. The crew on the Itasca tried desperately to respond, to give her a signal to lock onto, but it seemed she couldn't hear them well. Her messages became more urgent. She reported that she was running low on fuel. She believed she was close, very close to Howland Island, but she could not see it. The tension was unbearable. Her last known radio transmission was chilling. "We are on the line 157337, she said, referring to a line of position. "We are running on line north and south." And then there was silence. Just static. Nothing more. Amelia Earhart, Fred Noonan, and their advanced Lockheed Electra had simply vanished. They had flown off the map and into the realm of legend. It was as if the vast Pacific Ocean had swallowed them whole, leaving not a single trace behind. The world was stunned. How could this happen to the world's greatest female pilot? What followed was the largest and most expensive search and rescue operation in American history at that time. The U.S. Navy and Coast Guard scoured over 250,000 square miles of ocean. Ships and planes crisscrossed the area where she was last believed to be. They searched for any sign of wreckage, an oil slick, or a life raft. But they found nothing, absolutely nothing. It was this complete lack of evidence that gave birth to the enduring mystery. What really happened to Amelia Earhart? Did she crash and sink? Did she land on an uninhabited island, or did a more sinister fate await her? The questions began then, and they have never stopped. Amelia Earhart was born with a spirit destined to fly. Her story begins in Atchison, Kansas on July 24, 1897. From a young age, she was different, a tomboy, a leader, a thrill-seeker. She had a hunger for adventure that would define her life. She kept a scrapbook of newspaper clippings about successful women, creating a blueprint for the woman she wanted to become. In Iowa, at the state fair in 1908, 10-year-old Amelia saw her first airplane. The seed was planted. During World War I, while visiting her sister in Toronto, she trained as a nurse's aide. She spent hours watching the pilots of the Royal Flying Corps training. The sky was calling her. After the war, Amelia's life was still searching for a direction. The real turning point came when she and her father went to an air show in Long Beach, California. Amelia paid for a 10-minute flight, and that short ride changed everything. She knew instantly what she had to do. As soon as we left the ground, she later wrote, "I knew I myself had to fly." She took on odd jobs to earn money for flying lessons. Her first instructor was another female pioneer, Netta Snook. Amelia was a natural, but she was also a hard worker, learning everything she could. To look the part, she bought a leather jacket and cut her hair short. Within a year, she bought her very own airplane, a bright yellow Kinner Airster biplane she nicknamed the Canary. In 1922, she flew the Canary to an altitude of 14,000 feet, setting a new world record for a female pilot. She was here to compete, to excel, to show the world that the sky was not just a man's domain. In the late 1920s, Amelia Earhart, though a respected pilot, wasn't yet a global icon. That changed in 1928 when she was offered a spot on the Friendship flight across the Atlantic. Though not the pilot, she accepted, recognizing it as a crucial opportunity. The Friendship landed in Wales, and Earhart became an overnight sensation. Dubbed Lady Lindy, she used her fame to advocate for women's rights in aviation. But Earhart yearned to cross the Atlantic on her own terms, driven by a burning ambition. The Friendship flight propelled Amelia to new heights. She became a public figure, marrying publisher George P. Putnam, who managed her career. Together, they planned a solo flight across the Atlantic. On May 20th, 1932, she climbed into her Lockheed Vega. The flight was a brutal test. After 15 grueling hours, she landed in a field in Northern Ireland. She was the first woman to fly solo non-stop across the Atlantic. The world erupted in celebration. Amelia Earhart became a legend. She received the Distinguished Flying Cross. Amelia continued to set records. One final challenge remained, a flight around the globe. By 1936, Amelia Earhart had conquered the Atlantic and Pacific, setting speed and altitude records. But Amelia was an explorer, always seeking the next challenge. She set her sights on a monumental journey, a flight around the world. Not the easy way, but via a grueling equatorial route, the longest and most difficult path at 29,000 miles. This was her Everest, a final validation of her skills. It was a bold statement about aviation's future, connecting the globe. The planning was a monumental task, requiring meticulous attention to detail and a global support network. The world watched, captivated, as Amelia embarked on her final, great adventure. To conquer the world, Amelia needed a very special machine. Her trusty red Lockheed Vega, the plane that took her solo across the Atlantic, was not up to this mammoth task. For a journey of this length and complexity, she needed the most advanced aircraft available. She chose a state-of-the-art, twin-engine marvel, the Lockheed 10E Electra. It was a sleek, all-metal monoplane, a symbol of the new age of aviation. It was fast, powerful, and with the right modifications, capable of flying incredible distances. This plane would be her partner, her shelter, and her lifeline in the vast emptiness of the sky. Purdue University, where Amelia worked as a career counselor for female students, funded the purchase of the Electra. But the stock model wasn't enough. The plane was transformed into what Amelia proudly called her flying laboratory. Standard passenger seats were ripped out to make way for massive, custom-built fuel tanks in the fuselage and wings. These tanks allowed the Electra to carry over 1,150 gallons of fuel, giving it a staggering range of more than 4,000 miles. This modification turned the elegant passenger plane into a long-range, fuel-heavy beast designed for one purpose: to stay in the air for as long as humanly possible. The cockpit and cabin were filled with the latest technology of the 1930s. It had advanced radio equipment for communication and a state-of-the-art radio direction finder for navigation. There were multiple compasses, a chronometer for precise timekeeping, and instruments to measure drift from the wind. However, much of this technology was still new, and honestly sometimes unreliable. It required immense skill to use effectively, especially over the featureless ocean. To handle the complex task of navigating across thousands of miles of open water, Amelia knew she couldn't do it alone. She needed a world-class navigator by her side. She chose one of the best in the business, Fred Noonan. He was a former ship captain and a master of celestial navigation, the art of finding one's position using the sun, moon, and stars. He had extensive experience pioneering Pan American Airways' China Clipper routes across the Pacific. Noonan was quiet and professional, the perfect counterpart to Amelia's public persona. Together, they were a formidable team. She was the pilot, the commander, the face of the mission. He was the navigator, the silent guide, the man who would chart their path through the immense empty blue. Their combined skills were their best defense against the dangers that lay ahead. Before the fateful eastbound journey that would seal her legend, there was another attempt. The original plan was to fly from east to west. On St. Patrick's Day, March 17, 1937, Amelia, Fred Noonan, and a second navigator, Harry Manning, took off from Oakland, California. The first leg of their global flight was a record-setting dash to Honolulu, Hawaii. They made it in just under 16 hours, a blistering pace that proved the Electra's capability. Spirits were high. The plane had performed beautifully, and the team was working well together. It seemed like a perfect start to their epic adventure. The plan from Hawaii was to fly to tiny Howland Island, then on to Australia, and continue westward around the globe. After a few days of rest and final preparations in Honolulu, the team was ready for the next, more challenging leg. On March 20th, they taxied the heavily loaded Electra onto the runway at Luke Field for the takeoff to Howland. The plane was laden with a full load of fuel, making it heavy and difficult to control. As Amelia pushed the throttles forward, the powerful twin engines roared to life, and the silver plane began to accelerate down the runway, gathering speed for its long flight. Suddenly, disaster struck. The plane swerved violently. Some witnesses said a tire blew, others reported a problem with the landing gear. Whatever the cause, Amelia lost control. The Electra ground-looped, spinning around in a terrifying screech of metal against pavement. One wing dug into the ground, and the landing gear collapsed under the immense strain. The plane was severely damaged, with its underside ripped open and fuel leaking onto the tarmac. The flight was over before it had even truly begun. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, but their dreams were shattered on that Hawaiian runway. The aircraft had to be shipped back to California by sea for extensive and costly repairs. The westward attempt was a failure. It was a major setback, a crushing blow to Amelia's morale and finances. Many would have seen it as a bad omen, a warning from fate to abandon the dangerous quest. But Amelia Earhart was not one to be defeated by a single failure. For her, this was just another obstacle to overcome. She was determined to see her mission through. The crash forced a delay and a change of plans, setting the stage for a second attempt, one that would follow a different route and lead them toward a very different destiny. After the crash in Hawaii, Amelia refused to give up. The plane was repaired, but the delay meant weather patterns had shifted, making the original westward plan unviable. A new plan was forged: fly from west to east, chasing the sun. On June 1st, 1937, Amelia and Fred Noonan began their second attempt from Miami, Florida. They flew across the Caribbean, South Atlantic to Africa, then to Karachi, Calcutta, battling monsoons and navigating vast deserts. By late June, they reached Lae, New Guinea, having flown over 22,000 miles. Only 7,000 miles remained, the most perilous stretch to Howland Island. On July 2, 1937, the silver Lockheed Electra roared to life for the most dangerous leg of its journey. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan faced 2,556 miles of empty Pacific Ocean. Their target, Howland Island. The Electra, heavy with fuel, lumbered down the runway and lifted into the sky. They turned east towards the rising sun. But the Pacific sky turned cruel. Overcast skies hid the stars, forcing Noonan to rely on dead reckoning. As the long night wore on, uncertainty grew. They flew into the unknown, trusting their instruments and instincts. Thousands of miles away, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca waited near Howland Island, acting as a radio homing beacon. The ship's radio room was a place of tense anticipation. Chief radioman Leo Bellertz and his team strained their ears for a signal from the Electra. Then, a voice broke through the static. It was Amelia Earhart, reporting cloudy conditions and a weak signal. She could transmit, but couldn't hear the Itasca's replies. "We must be on you, but cannot see you," she radioed. Amelia and Noonan were lost, close to safety but unable to find it. Time was running out. The Electra had been in the air for nearly 20 hours, the engines drinking precious fuel. Amelia's voice now carried a clear tone of desperation. "Gas is running low," she reported. A pilot's greatest fear is the silence that comes when the fuel tanks run dry over an empty ocean. She was close. Her signal strength indicated she was in the immediate vicinity. But in the vastness of the Pacific, close could still mean dozens of miles away. It was a tragic, fatal breakdown in communication. With fuel running dangerously low, Amelia had to make a choice. She faced a fuel tank that was about to hit empty, with nothing but endless water below. Her next move would be her last. In her final transmission, Amelia stated, "We are on the line 157337. This referred to a line of position, calculated from a sun sighting. They knew they were somewhere along this line. Her next words were the last anyone ever heard from her. "We are running on line north and south." Their plan was to fly along this line, a desperate search pattern. After that message, the radio went silent. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan had vanished. Their final message was a clue to a mystery that would endure for generations. When Amelia Earhart's final message faded into silence, the world did not immediately know. For the crew of the Itasca, a sickening dread began to set in. At 10:40 a.m., just over 2 hours after Amelia's last transmission, he sent a stark message. Earhart failed to arrive. This sparked a global firestorm of concern. The news spread like wildfire. Many believed she had simply run out of fuel and made a controlled water landing. The world held its breath, expecting news of their discovery at any moment. Her husband, George Putnam, became the public face of the agonizing wait. Across the globe, people were glued to their radios. Her silence was a shared global anxiety. The world was united in a single desperate hope. The US government authorized a massive search and rescue operation, responding to public outcry. It became the largest air and sea search in American history. The US Navy diverted immense resources to find Amelia Earhart. The Itasca began combing the waters near Howland Island, following Amelia's last message. Joined by the USS Colorado and the USS Lexington, the ocean became a very busy place. The search area was immense. Pilots flew grid patterns, scanning for any sign of wreckage. Sailors strained their eyes towards the horizon. The hunt was a systematic race against time, guided by Amelia's final transmission. The entire world watched, hoping this unprecedented show of force would succeed. The search was a heroic effort, but the Pacific Ocean is a master at keeping its secrets. For days, the relentless search continued. Each sunrise brought renewed hope, each sunset deepening despair. But the Pacific Ocean offered up nothing, They found floating logs and seaweed, but not a single piece of the Lockheed Electra. There was no wreckage, no oil slick, and no life raft. How could a 10,000-pound airplane simply vanish without a trace? The USS Lexington arrived, launching wave after wave of planes. They expanded the search to nearby islands, looking for any sign. The vast Pacific remained silent and empty. The greatest search in history was finding absolutely nothing. After 16 days, the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard faced a grim reality. They had covered 250,000 square miles and found nothing, not a single piece of wreckage. On July 19, 1937, the official search was called off. The government concluded Earhart and Noonan had crashed at sea. The announcement was a devastating blow, but the lack of evidence fueled doubt and speculation. The end of the official search was the birth of the Amelia Earhart mystery. The questions were just getting started. The simplest explanation: the crash and sink theory. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan simply ran out of fuel. They were lost, exhausted, and flying blind. Their plane plunged into the deep, dark waters of the Pacific Ocean. This theory explains the total lack of wreckage, aligning with Amelia's last radio call stating she was low on fuel. But for many, a simple end in the middle of the ocean feels unsatisfying. This fuels the fire for other, more complex theories. The Nikumaroro hypothesis suggests Amelia and Fred, unable to find Howland, landed on Nikumaroro, an uninhabited atoll with a flat reef, perfect for an emergency landing. Instead of a sudden crash, imagine a desperate landing, the Electra battered, but the crew alive, stranded far from help. Relief quickly fades as they realize the island has no fresh water and little hope of rescue. Tiger researchers have found intriguing clues: aircraft debris, a 1930s woman's shoe, a sextant box, and a possible castaway campsite. Most haunting bones found in 1940, likely a European woman of Amelia's height. The Nikumaroro theory paints a slow, tragic end. 2 castaways waiting for a rescue that never came. It's a story of hope, survival, and heartbreak on a lonely shore. The Nikumaroro theory gains weight with reports of radio distress calls after Amelia vanished. For days, amateur radio operators worldwide picked up faint signals. Sometimes a woman's voice pleading for help, sometimes fragments of information. Betty Klenk, a teenager in Florida, even transcribed hours of these desperate broadcasts. The signals, strongest at night, matched the Electra's radio limitations and triangulated near Nikumaroro. Dismissed as hoaxes at the time, modern analysis finds over 50 credible reports. These were likely Amelia's last attempts to reach the world, as the tide eventually swept the Electra away. The world listened, but no one acted in time. The distress calls remain a chilling echo of hope lost. Another theory, the Japanese capture theory, claims Amelia and Fred were captured while spying or straying into Japanese territory. According to this, they landed in the Marshall Islands, were taken prisoner, and died in captivity on Saipan. Eyewitness accounts and a debunked photograph fuel the story, but hard evidence is lacking. The theory suggests a cover-up by both governments to avoid pre-war tensions. Most researchers dismiss it as sensational and unsupported. Still, the idea persists, adding intrigue and conspiracy to the mystery. It's a darker, more dramatic ending, one that captivates but remains unproven. Decades later, Amelia Earhart's fate remains unsolved, a question mark that endures. Did she crash at sea, survive as a castaway, or become a prisoner? Each theory offers a different ending, but none provide certainty. The mystery itself is what keeps her story alive. We're drawn to fill in the blanks, to imagine her final moments. Her disappearance transformed her from a record-breaking pilot into a legend. She symbolizes both the fear of vanishing and the hope of survival. Amelia's story is a modern myth, her courage and mystery immortal. In a world mapped by satellites, her legend reminds us that some mysteries endure. Beyond the mystery, Amelia Earhart's legacy is her role as a trailblazer and icon. She shattered gender barriers, proving courage and ambition know no bounds. Her advocacy for women's rights and her friendship with Eleanor Roosevelt made her a voice for equality. In aviation, she promoted air travel and helped shape the future of flight. Her name is now synonymous with exploration and fearless ambition. Amelia's life was a blueprint for possibility, inspiring generations to chase their dreams. Please know I'm quite aware of the hazards. I want to do it because I want to do it. Her legacy is a timeless call to action. Face your fears, chase your horizons, and live boldly. The official search for Amelia Earhart ended in 1937, but the unofficial search never stopped. Her disappearance has driven historians, scientists, and adventurers to solve the unsolvable. Groups like TIGAR have launched expeditions to Nicumaroro, searching for clues. Advances in technology have opened the possibility of finding the wreckage of the Electra. Every few years, the story resurfaces with new sonar data or metal fragments. In 2024, Deep Sea Vision released a sonar image of an airplane-shaped object. The hunt continues, driven by the belief that the answer is waiting to be found. Why does the world remain so captivated by Amelia Earhart? It's a real-life thriller with a brave hero, a daring quest, a dramatic climax, and a profoundly mysterious ending. Her story speaks to the fundamental human desire to explore, to push beyond the known. She encourages us to look up at the sky or out at the ocean and dream. Her tale also serves as a powerful reminder of the fragility of life and the untamable power of nature. Amelia Earhart still flies with us because she is more than a memory. She is an inspiration. She is a symbol of breaking barriers, of chasing dreams with relentless passion, and of living a life full of purpose. Amelia Earhart is gone, but her journey and her legend will continue to soar forever.